care benefits in generations, and it can impact veterans across generations. The PACT Act promises that the VA will provide the care and benefits that those veterans have earned and deserve, and over 500,000 veterans and their survivors have filed claims so far. But has the promise been fulfilled? Healing America's Heroes, a benefits breakthrough, will dig into what the PACT Act covers and how the Veterans Administration is working to fulfill their promise.
Thank you to the Eunice Joyce Gardner Charitable Foundation for its leadership support of the Health Channel.
Welcome to Healing America's Heroes, a benefits breakthrough town hall. I'm Olga Villaverde, and joining me is Dr. Michael Zinner, CEO and Executive Medical Director of Miami Cancer Institute and Baptist Health Cancer Care.
Thanks, Olga. You know, I was an Army doctor stationed at Walter Reed during the Vietnam War, and I saw a lot of young men come through those wards suffering from toxic exposure. So it's wonderful that there is now more help for them and also for other veterans.
Absolutely, Dr. Zinner. And that help is the PACT Act. A little over a year ago, President Biden signed the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, honoring our promise to address comprehensive toxics, or the PACT Act, into law. Then came the push to let veterans know what it's all about.
When I deployed, I didn't realize that even the air we were breathing was dangerous. Veterans like us are now eligible for new VA care and benefits based on when and where we served. Apply today. Visit va.gov/PACT.
The VA did a great job promoting the start of the PACT Act, but there's still some confusion about what it is and what it covers.
So let's introduce our panel of experts who can help us dig into what exactly the PACT Act is and what it covers. Joining us in the studio are Dr. Shereef Elnahal, the Undersecretary for Health at the Department of Veterans Affairs, headquartered in Washington, D.C. Joshua Jacobs is the Undersecretary for Benefits at the Veterans Benefits Administration. And also joining us is Michael Figlioli, Director of National Veterans Services at the Veterans of Foreign Wars Organization. Welcome to all of you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks so much.
No, thank you so much for your time. Good evening. Now, before we begin, I want to remind our viewers that if you have a question for our panel, please email it to us. It's right there on your screen at questions@allhealthtv.com. That's questions@allhealthtv.com. Also, if you have a question about the PACT Act or other veterans benefits and health care, here's a number you can call to get more information. It's 1-800-MY-VA-411 or 1-800-698-2411, and we'll be showing you that number throughout the half hour. Dr. Zinner.
Dr. Elsri, let's start with you. Most people know this law as the PACT Act. So who is Heath Robinson, and why is he mentioned in the legal name of the law?
Well, thanks so much again for having me. Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson was an American hero, a soldier who was deployed to both Kosovo and Iraq. And as he was stationed in Iraq, one of his duties was to guard these really big burn pits that were there for all sorts of waste and ended up emanating toxic fumes. So he was right there exposed to those burn pits. And after he came home, he developed multiple medical conditions, including an autoimmune disease, a type of disease where your immune system attacks your own body, but also a rare type of lung cancer. And because of those illnesses, he passed away in 2020. But his wife, Danielle, and his daughter, Brielle, advocated for him to get benefits while he was alive, and one of his dying wishes was for them to continue advocating, even though we weren't able to give him the benefits he deserved before he died. And so as a result of that advocacy and so many others, the PACT Act is here. We're able to offer so many more benefits and health care to veterans who are deployed and exposed to these toxins.
Thank you, Doctor. And we remember him, obviously, with the PACT Act. Josh, can you explain to us what exactly it is?
Sure. The PACT Act is perhaps the largest expansion of access to benefits and health care in generations. It's providing access to benefits for veterans and survivors who were impacted by toxic exposure, not only in the Vietnam War, but also through the Gulf War and the post-9/11 generations. And in addition to taking care of veterans who've already been impacted, it gives VA the tools to take care of veterans in the future who may be exposed.
And that's great to hear. Michael, this was one of the VFW's top legislative priorities. What role did your organization play in getting this law passed?
Oh, thanks for the question. We testified on this legislation before the House and the VA Senate committees. We spoke at numerous press conferences and media events. We worked hand in hand with House and Senate Veterans Committee staff to compile comprehensive toxic exposure bills. And our team conducted countless meetings with congressional members and their staffs to convey the importance of the passage of the PACT Act. Our members sent over 180,000 messages to Congress urging the passage of the PACT Act. Staff and members from multiple states joined in the effort. And we even camped out on the steps of the Congress to demonstrate our seriousness in getting this legislation across the goal line.
Dr. Elnahal, this is a very important act. And how long did it take you to get this law passed?
Well, I should just be clear that veterans and advocates have been advocating for decades to get more benefits to folks exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam, burn pits in the first Gulf War and the post-9/11 conflicts, contaminated water at Camp Lejeune. And all of that effort ended up finally leading to a bill being introduced in 2021 by Representative Takano, the ranking member of our committee in the House of Representatives, ultimately passed the Senate the following summer and signed into law by the president last year. But make no mistake, veterans themselves and advocates and so many partners with the VA helped get this law through. And now we're able to get so many more veterans the care they deserve.
It takes a village. Josh, why was it important that this law happen right now?
We've had veterans waiting generations to get access to benefits and the care that they have earned. Not only that, but we also have countless veterans who are dealing with terminal illnesses. So it's been imperative for us to deliver those benefits and health care as quickly as possible.
Michael, getting the PACT Act passed was, we just heard, one of VFW's top legislative priorities. How important is this benefits program to both veterans and their families?
It's the biggest legislative effort, definitely this century, if not of all time. It affects veterans at so many levels, not only from Korea, Vietnam, to current day veterans, but there's also the impact on their families as well. Certainly have to thank the VA and the USB for moving some of those terminal claims earlier in order to make sure that these veterans who are impacted, who have been waiting for years, who have been denied before and gone through this process and may have lost hope, to get those benefits, and certainly to Dr. Elnahal and his staff to ensure that these veterans now will be able to get the health care that they so badly need and have earned.
And you're so right, Michael. So well deserved. Josh, now besides health care, are there any other benefits available to those who qualify for this?
Absolutely. So if you apply for a PACT Act today, we'll not only consider those specific PACT conditions, but we'll consider any other conditions that you apply for. And if you're approved, we may be able to provide you with access to benefits like education or home loans, life insurance, and many others.
Michael, this is important. Now we're getting into some details. How can a veteran work with the VFW to help them apply to receive these benefits?
Yeah, thank you. Reach out to your local service officer, whether it's a VFW, which we prefer, American Legion, DAV, somebody who's accredited before the VA, and make that ask. Tell them what that situation is. Tell them you may have been impacted or by this PACT Act. You might be eligible for those benefits. Sit down with that counselor, have that conversation, and we will walk you through that process. We will tell you the documentation you need, the evidence you need, and we will also tell you what to expect from VA and try to make sense of those communications you get. We're there every step of the way with you, from the time you sign that power of attorney to allow us to represent you until the time that that claim is decided, and even all the way through the appeals and through the appeals process.
Josh, I'm just curious, what about someone that's watching right now and says, my father passed away, my husband passed away. So what about family members of deceased veterans? Can they qualify for benefits under the PACT Act? And then I'm wondering also what type of benefits they would get.
Absolutely. One of the best parts of the PACT Act is it allows VA to provide benefits to survivors of veterans who passed away from one of the conditions covered in the PACT Act during a period of service. And so for anyone who lost a loved one and applied previously, please come back and apply again. We're actively reaching out to try to send you information, but you don't have to wait for us. And if you apply, you could receive benefits to include disability indemnity compensation. There's the possibility you could be eligible for some education benefits. There's health care programs for survivors. And so there are a variety of ways in which we might be able to help you. You can do that directly through va.gov/PACT. You can call 1-800-MyVA411, or you can work with an accredited representative like a VSO.
So much important information in there. And Dr. Elnahal, is there a time limit for veterans to apply, and does the PACT Act ever expire?
Well, once you get PACT Act benefits, the good news is that many of those benefits could be there for your entire life. But there are some deadlines that I want folks to be aware of. So August 10th of this year is the day where you will no longer be able to backdate your benefits to August of last year when the president signed the bill. So it's another way of saying, please go to our website, va.gov/PACT, and apply for benefits now. The other date to be aware of is September 30th. If you're a post-9/11 veteran who's separated from service between 2001 and 2013, and you missed that 5-year window where you could essentially automatically qualify for health care within the VA, you now have until September 30th to do just that. So if you're a post-9/11 veteran, there's so many ways to get benefits under this legislation. Please go to our website and apply.
Thank you, Doctor. Josh, let me go back to you. I was reading here the PACT Act added to the health conditions that the VA presumes were caused by toxic exposure because of where they served. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question. We are able, with evidence that you served in one of the covered locations and time periods, and with evidence of a diagnosis of one of those conditions, to assume that your military service caused or exacerbated one of these conditions. We don't have to prove a connection like we do through the normal process. So a presumptive service connection makes it much easier for VA to grant benefits.
And I saw a list of conditions there from 1 through 15, so there's quite a few there, Josh. Actually, 1 through 20, my apologies.
Yeah, there are
26.
more than 20 sets of different healthcare categories.
Okay.
And within those categories, there are actually additional conditions. So it's actually a couple hundred that are covered. And we want veterans to know what those conditions are and to please apply. You can find more information on va.gov/PACT or by calling 1-800-MyVA411.
All right, and just a follow-up, Josh. How do you determine who qualifies for the new benefits and who does not?
For PACT Act benefits, it's very simple. We need evidence that you served in one of the covered locations. That could be Vietnam or some of the surrounding countries that have been added by the PACT Act during one of the time periods. It could be the Persian Gulf War, or it could be in Iraq, Afghanistan, or some of the other Central Command locations. Once we have that evidence, and we have evidence of a diagnosis of one of the covered conditions, we can provide you benefits under the PACT Act.
Dr. Elnahal, you know, as a fellow physician and looking at that list of 26 conditions, how is the list of qualifying conditions determined?
Well, as Josh just mentioned, we're talking about hundreds of conditions that could fall into any one of those categories. And so we had a process where, first of all, we considered advocates like Michael and his VSO, advocates like Danielle, who advocated for veterans like her late husband. And we took all of that input and prioritized what veterans told us they were concerned about in terms of their exposures. We also consulted our scientists, the best scientists in the world, who investigate the relationship between these exposures and clinical outcomes that may result from them. We took all of that in, and we worked with Congress to come up with these conditions. And as we mentioned, there are so many of them. Please come apply. You may have one that you're not even aware of that could be discovered on an exam. Please try us out and trust us with your care.
Josh, I have a follow-up. If a veteran served in one of the presumptive areas, but the illness they have is not on the list for that area, are there other benefits that they might be eligible for?
Yeah, what I would say to a veteran who falls into that example is to please apply for benefits anyway. We can still try to grant you benefits through the direct process, the normal process. We won't be able to assume the connection like we can with a presumptive, but we can do development of evidence and try to identify a connection to grant benefits. The other thing I would say is we're also looking for new opportunities and new research so that we might be able to establish additional presumptive service connections moving forward. So the more veterans that come to us to file benefits and to seek care can help their fellow veterans.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Elnahal, I have a question from a viewer that just came in, and I want to read it to you if you don't mind. They're asking, what do you consider a disability? Can you take that for me?
Yeah, so disability is a general term that basically says you used to have a certain level of function, you used to be at a certain state of health, and because of your service or because of a condition or an exposure, your health has deteriorated or gotten worse, or something you used to be able to do, you're no longer able to do. So disability is a really broad term. It could be anything from high blood pressure to a physical disability that most folks usually associate with that word, like not being able to walk, et cetera. So again, any health condition you might have could qualify as a disability.
Thank you, doctor, and thank you to that viewer who sent that question. Josh, I just thought of something. So if a veteran wants to appeal their denial of benefits, what's the process there, and what's the success rate of maybe that being overturned, if you will?
Yeah, well, the appeals process was changed in the last few years, so there are actually multiple lanes and multiple options for a veteran to consider when filing appeal. So what I would suggest is talk to an accredited representative like a VSO, because the path you choose really depends on the particular details of your case. You need to figure out what's best for you. There are different options and different trade-offs. And so working with an accredited representative will help you ensure that the decision you make is right for your particular circumstances.
We spoke with 2 veterans and asked for an eyewitness account of what they encountered on their deployment or how they and their families were affected by their service.
Our first veteran is former U.S. Marine Sergeant Sylvester McIntosh. He served in Vietnam with the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, nicknamed the Walking Dead. Take a look.
Our major mission was search and destroy. Destroy the enemy, search for them, and destroy them. And I was in 10 major skirmishes during that time. In the beginning, we didn't really know about Agent Earn. Working in the jungle, like anything, going through a bunch of grass and underhang and this type of thing. I'm sure many times they sprayed in the northern section where we were. It kills the vegetation. It turned a green vegetation, it's totally brown. We didn't know when they sprayed. All we knew they sprayed. Our main goal was to search and destroy, so we weren't thinking about the vegetation and such as that. Well, I really didn't realize I probably was exposed to Agent Orange until my daughter was born. She's now 53 years of age, and I guess it was in her 2nd year we saw a major change in her behavior and her movement. And so I took her to every doctor that I could, and they came back and told me, you know, your daughter is mentally challenged. When we got out back in the 60s and all, nobody even told us anything about disability. We had to find out on our own. With the new soldiers, Marines, or whoever, they are doing a better job because my son just retired. And prior to him getting out, he already had his rating. I would do it again. Yeah, I have no problem in serving my country. I'm about the 5th generation. Our problem is how are you going to take care of your veterans when they get home?
Dr. Elnahal, I'm going to toss to you about this Agent Orange, but first I want to go to a viewer question, and it just came in from Mario on YouTube. And Mario, thank you. Dr. Zinner, they're asking, can you please provide which locations are applicable, especially during the first Gulf War? Great question there.
Yes, Josh, I wonder if you could take that first, and then we can go ahead and go to Dr. Elnahal.
Yeah, we have a wide range of locations. It includes Iraq and Kuwait. I would suggest you go to va.gov/PACT for the full list. There's a long list of locations and time periods to include the Persian Gulf War and more recent conflicts. And depending on where you served, you may be eligible for the PACT Act.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to go back now to what U.S. Marine Sergeant Sylvester McIntosh was talking about, Dr. Elnahal. For those who don't know, why is Agent Orange considered toxic, and what are some of the serious health conditions it can cause?
Well, firstly, I want to thank Sylvester for his service and for his courage in sharing his story. There's so many other veterans like him who are exposed to this toxin. Agent Orange was a way for us to be able to clear the battlefield, if you will, in Vietnam and the surrounding region so that our soldiers could move forward with their operation in that conflict. But as a result of clearing out all the vegetation, of course, that had effects on the soldiers who were deployed there. And those effects range from now hypertension, which is recognized by the PACT Act, high blood pressure, which is a very common condition, to many other conditions that we've long considered connected to Agent Orange. And so now PACT Act allows us to expand in ways that we've never been able to for other conditions like high blood pressure, a blood disorder called MGUS. So again, please apply if you've had any of these conditions, and definitely apply if you're exposed not only in Vietnam, but any of the other surrounding regions. The law definitely expands the number of areas where you may have been deployed in the Vietnam War, even if it wasn't mainland Vietnam.
You know, Olga, another issue that the PACT Act addresses are burn pits, which we heard about earlier, which were widely used in Iraq and other areas in the Gulf where our veterans were deployed.
And one of them is our next vet, U.S. Army retired Lieutenant Colonel Carrol Oates. He served in Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm with the Headquarters Division tasked with setting up field medical units in Saudi Arabia and following the frontline soldiers as they advanced into Kuwait. Take a look at this.
There were many, especially nights, when they would fire the Scud missiles in our direction. And we got the alarm and we operated and stayed in the mask and the suit for quite some time. I mean, literally a couple of days at one point or another. We had some other things that were there on the Saudi side of the border. When we first got there, the biggest problem was we were located remotely out in the desert. What to do with waste, not only garbage waste, but human waste. Most of the units had to start doing the old-fashioned way that was done in Vietnam, and that was burning the waste. I was told to go down to Kuwait City, which had just been liberated. The helicopter that I was on, we flew down, and we had to fly around and find a pathway through to get to Kuwait City because the oil wells were all burning. It was terrible. He found a way around it and didn't get much oil on the helicopters, and he didn't want to get it ingested into the engines either. And we landed at the Kuwait airfield, which was burning and on fire. The oil was so thick in the air with the smoke as well, but the oil itself, you could feel it. If you rubbed your forehead, you'd have oil on your hands, and you could actually taste the oil. So we were very careful about trying to wear, most of the troops wore a bandana around their face. They didn't want to put the mask on because the mask would immediately get all oiled up and you wouldn't be able to see out through the goggles. Obviously, the soldiers that I saw, we were all taking measures to try not to have a problem. But you couldn't help it. If you had to stay and work in that area, you had an issue for sure.
You know, Michael, I was watching you listening to this story, such a powerful story. Your thoughts on this quickly, if you don't mind, because it's just, it speaks volumes.
You know, we all served in different capacities, but we all had that commonality, and to having to have gone through that and lived through those experiences, and then go back to VA previously, not this current time, apply for benefits and then be denied, and go through that frustration, knowing you served your country, you're owed those things, and now the PACT Act has come along. It just makes me feel really good that, you know, we did a really good thing, not only for OEF, but for our Korean and Vietnam veterans as well. So really proud of that.
Thank you so much for those words. You know, we're just about out of time, and we'd like to get everyone's final thoughts. It's been such a great town hall, such packed information.
Let's start with you, Dr. Elnahal.
We got about 30 seconds, Dr. Elnahal.
Well, I'm just rounding out with a veteran story named Mike. We just heard Michael talk as well. This is a veteran who lives in Illinois, was part of our VA healthcare system, but had been deployed to Laos instead of Vietnam. Didn't get the benefits he deserved, but now he qualifies for those benefits to include treatment for his cancer. And so this veteran's life could be saved because he's now in VA. Please visit our website, take advantage of these new benefits, va.gov/PACT.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Josh, I got about 10 seconds for you.
Great. I would just say thank you for hosting us, and to any veterans or survivors, please reach out, file a claim, pursue health care. You've earned it, and we want to give it to you.
Absolutely. Michael, final word. I got maybe 10 seconds to offer you as well.
Yeah, again, to echo to Josh, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this legislation. Please, if you've been previously denied, please reapply. If you haven't applied, apply. Please get your VA benefits. You've earned them. You deserve them.
Thank you, sir.
It's so important to get this information out to our veterans. I want to thank the panel, and I will just tell you, as a veteran myself, this is a very important part of what we need to get out, and it's very personal for me.
Absolutely.
Olga?
And Dr. Zinner, I want to thank you for your service, and to all the veterans out there, thank you so much for your service. And to our viewers, thank you so much for joining us. Take care, and remember, we thank them all.
Thank you to the Eunice Joyce Gardner Charitable Foundation for its leadership support of the Health Channel.